Welcome to Fiery Discourse, your podcast or media featuring dragonesses, female dinosaurs, and other similar saurians and scalies. I'm your host, Ludmillanon, and with me are my co-hosts, Angron, Mathmachine, and the Shark. Today is our 115th episode, and we're discussing the 1959 B movie, The Giant Gila Monster. So, let's get things started.
Texas, y'all.
Yep. Also made a little boo-boo there. It's actually the 114th, not 15th. Sorry about that. But
Yep.
yeah, go ahead, Chuck.
According to laws of navigation, there is no way a bee should fly. Cause wait, wrong bee movie here.
Yeah, if only this was a crossover with that. But yeah, so this is basically one of the more iconic 1950s B movies, and the backstory on is just as interesting as the real thing, because how it started, because in Texas in the 1950s, there was a real estate tycoon slash radio station owner named Gordon McLennan. He basically owned a chain of drive-in theaters and thought to himself one day, hey, I can cut out the middleman by making movies for my own drive-ins and I don't have to pay any production company. So he set up his own production company called Hollywood Pictures, not to be confused with the Hollywood Pictures that made movies like The Sixth Sense and Super Mario Brothers and Leslie Nielsen movies and stuff like that. This Hollywood Pictures only made two movies, this and the equally so bad it's good classic The Killer Shrews. So that's the level of quality we got with these guys. Oh, go ahead, Angron.
Yeah, embodying the phrase God can't do all the work, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Ray Kellogg, the director of both this and Killer Shrews, previously worked as a cinematographer and special effects supervisor on actual movies like The King and I and How to Marry a Millionaire and Carousel and stuff like that. He later would go on to direct one more movie, the pro-Vietnam War movie, The Green Beret, starring John Wayne.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's quite a career. But yeah, basically, the production on both of these movies made by Hollywood Pictures is pretty amateur, and they're not good movies, but they are fun movies, and you'll find out more right now. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
To explain how low budget this is, this was made on allegedly a budget of about $140,000, which was about a tenth of what a typical budget for a movie was back in the day. And to even further emphasize just how low budget this is, a average movie in the 30s cost twice what this cost to make.
Wow. Yep,
Wow.
so that's what we're talking about. Shark, go ahead.
Well, also to know how low budget this movie was, just take a look at the monster of this film and how they did it.
We'll get to that. We'll get to
Oh,
that.
yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun talking about it. But the movie itself begins with a narrator talking about how there are places in the West that are unexplored where no human goes and how no life is seen. He explains how in the impenetrable wilderness that the Gila monster lives and that no one knows how large it can get. Now, what's interesting is two things. Number one, this movie has way better cinematography than you would think because the slow panning shot over the distant landscape looks pretty good. Number two, this is the only time we hear a narrator because 50s B movies loved their narrators. They love to have narrators explain the obvious over scenes that happen, but this one surprisingly didn't do that. And neither did Killer Shrews. That's the other movie that had just a narrator show up at the beginning to basically set up the story and then never appears again, which pretty good.
Indeed.
Yep. Basically, we then cut to a young couple sitting in their car before a loud hissing sound is heard. The car suddenly is pushed and rolls down a cliff, landing at the bottom. We then see a giant paw crush the claw, which also looks like it's crushing the camera. And we then get to the opening credits, which starts with the titular monster screaming. And to basically sum up what kind of movie this is a movie that unironically uses theremin music to sound spooky. I love it. I love any movie that anyone uses like the type of music.
Yeah.
That is so great. And granted, this was 59, but I feel like for 59, people didn't take that seriously by that point. But yeah, go ahead, Angron.
Yes, the theremin. Every aspiring horror movie maker's wet whistle or whatever.
Yep, at least when this is made. But yep, when we finish the opening credits, we see a group of teenagers basically dancing in the local diner. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, as soon as I heard that pop in, I knew the exact kind of schlock I was in for.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
there's gonna be a lot, all right. But yeah, we see a group of teenagers dancing in the local diner. One of them notices the arrival of Gordy and Jenny as they enter the diner. They all basically greet each other as another hot rod arrives. This one is driven by Chase, our main character, and his French girlfriend Lisa. Now, Chase is played by Don Sullivan, an actor who pretty much did mostly B movies until he retired pretty early on to become, I think, a chemist or something like that in like hairdressing. And Lisa is played by Lisa Simon, who actually was Miss France in the Miss Universe competition of that year. So, go ahead, Angron.
I hear Lisa Simone and think, add a freaking S, add a freaking P after M and an S after P, and I think you know what you get from that.
This is nice. Shark?
Yeah, unfortunately, the Nessie from last episode won't show up.
Yeah, that is a shame. But you can't have everything. But basically, what happens is when they get there, Chase is surprised he's not the last one, asking the others what happened to Pat and Liz, who are the couple from the opening sequence. Their friend suggested their car broke down, as Chase says that he worked on their car himself and that wouldn't happen. One of the others suggests he broke the speed shift as Chase walks off. Lisa says that she couldn't leave because Mr. Wheeler, Pat's father, was basically busy smoking cigars and being a jerk, which we'll see more of him later. One of the other teens asks her if Pat left, as she knows that Pat didn't come home for dinner. And then we are introduced to probably one of the best characters in the movie because we get to see Old Man Harris show up in his broken old jalopy, basically heading to the diner and whistling. And this guy is a hoot. He's played by let me try to see if I get this right. He's played by Shug Fisher, who was one of the few actual actors in this movie. He was apparently one of those actors who was really popular in the 30s and early 40s, and basically his whole shtick was he was playing like wacky old Southerners like this. So he pretty much had like a role basically carved out for him for this kind of movie. Yep. But Chase basically asks Old Man Harris if he wants to sell his car, as Harris asks why he wants to do it. Chase tells him that the car can be reworked to make it a good hot rod, as Harris says, buying a car is like getting married or going to New York. Everyone should do it once, but not twice. Chase says that he can get Chase says that he can get a good price, as Harris says that he bought the car for $695. It was worth nothing for years, then $100. He says he'll sell when it gets back to its original price. And we then get him basically saying that, I'll have me one of them, they are sody pops, and begins to start to drink it, which actually leads to a pretty good callback later on in the scene. But for now, basically, Chase talks about how Lisa will be going to the drive-in for the first time, as she says they have them in France as well. They all leave, as Pat tells the soda jerk to let them know when Pat and Liz get there, then offers $150 for Harris's car. Harris basically rebuffs him, saying that he wasn't born yesterday. He then takes a sip of the soda and basically spits it out all over the place of the taste, while the soda jerk laughs hysterically. And this is basically the equivalent to that one meme picture of the Frenchmen post World War II, sipping a Coca-Cola for the first time and spitting it out all over the camera.
Ah, nice.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. But we then cut to the sheriff's car as he arrives at Mr. Wheeler's house. The sheriff is played by Fred Graham, who was the only actual actor in the movie, basically. He was a John Wayne stunt double for many years, and he was also the cop that dies in the opening scene of Vertigo, interestingly enough. Mr. Wheeler basically tells the sheriff that Pat did not come home that night and was last seen with Liz, who is also missing. Mr. Wheeler's performance here, this is a guy who I don't think had any real acting experience outside of maybe community theater, because he is pretty wooden for the most part. Thankfully, he's not in it that much, but the scenes he is in, you can tell he's trying a bit above his pay grade, let's put it that way.
Indeed.
Yep. But basically what happens is Mr. Wheeler tells the sheriff that he should look for them everywhere, as the sheriff mentions that Pat was 19, the same age when he got married. Mr. Wheeler is outraged at the suggestion that his son eloped with Liz, so the sheriff tells him he'll do everything to find them and the car. Mr. Wheeler says that if he did that, he'll wring his son's neck. Then he blames Chase for being such a bad influence on the other teenagers in town. And here we get something that I do like, that the sheriff in this movie is not like one of those hardline authority figure types. He actually is really easygoing and laid back, and he understands that the teenagers just want to have fun while also making sure they don't get too rowdy. And I like that. I like that it's a really nice change. Like, that's one thing I give this movie credit for. It feels natural in a way. It feels like these are real people or something. Oh, go ahead, Shark.
Yeah, indeed, because usually they are the ones that they don't believe the protagonist that I saw a monster, I saw this, and no, you're drunk. Oh, hey, get out of here and blah blah blah. But here, it's a nice change of pace.
Yeah, definitely. Matt, you were saying?
Yeah, one thing that we're probably going to be saying several times throughout this episode is that this movie, and I think that this is why it has as good a following as it does, is because it does a really good job of just showing the charm and the authenticity of rural late 50s life. It doesn't feel like they're just putting on airs for a movie. This feels like how a town actually would be, that you're seeing the real people in a town, that they're acting the way that they normally would, that this is all just a day in the life sort of stuff.
Indeed.
Yeah, exactly. This is like, it's basically like the Last Picture Show, but set 10 years earlier, and also there's a giant lizard walking around.
Yeah,
Anyway, go
immediately
ahead,
better. Also, like I was going to say, normal for the. It's not just normal for the 1950s or late 50s in any case. It's pretty much like you said, it's pretty much natural in many respects, like in the dialogue and like the reactions and all that stuff. The pacing admittedly does struggle in a few places, but honestly, it wasn't too bad for the most part.
Yep. Like I said, they actually did a pretty good job there. But what happens next is that Mr. Wheeler basically the sheriff defends Chase, saying that he does more for the town than Mr. Wheeler ever did, and that he takes care of both his mother and his sister ever since his father died in one of Mr. Wheeler's oil drills. And like I say, this is very true to life because a lot of these small rural towns had like that one guy who owned everything in the town and like lorded it over them, you know? And again, really realistic there. But Mr. Wheeler basically demands that to have his son found, and if not, he'll take the sheriff's job. The sheriff says that he's the only police officer for miles around, and then he leaves to go to the garage that Chase works at. Chase sees that the sheriff got a new car, as the sheriff said the old one was so bad he would have needed a bicycle to catch up with them. Chase offers the sheriff to soup up his car, as the sheriff jokes that, "Oh, you'd make it so slow I wouldn't be able to catch you guys." And again, the rapport between them, it really does feel like you're a part of this town, like you're a part of these people. I could see why this movie is still talked about, whereas like 50 other movies from like the same time period really aren't. Oh, go ahead, Angron.
Yeah, honestly, you would be singing a different tune if it was Fozzie upgrading the Fonz, upgrading your car.
Yep.
Well, then again, this was the 1950s, so
Yep.
we'd have to wait about 20 years.
Well, maybe not, because Happy Days
Or
was set in
10
the
years.
50s at least.
True that.
But anyway, basically what happens then is that Chase tells him that he'd make it so that the sheriff's car would be super fast. The sheriff then tells Chase that Pat and Liz are missing, asking if they are in trouble. Chase basically says no, as the sheriff asks if they were planning to get unmarried. Chase says that he didn't know about it, as the sheriff asks if Pat had any money hidden. Chase then admits that Pat had $500 saved. The sheriff asks where Pat got it. Chase says that Pat basically saved it as an allowance from his father, to which I have to say, $500 back then was like, $50,000 today, so he probably got it. Either he had a good allowance and he was saving up since he was 10, to get that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, the sheriff and Chase wonder if Pat used it to elope with Liz, and Chase says that if Pat did such a thing, Mr. Wheeler would probably find him and kill him, much like how Liam Neeson would in Taken.
Mm-hmm.
The sheriff
You
basically
could
says
say
that,
he has a certain set of skills.
That's true. Well, not this guy. Definitely not Mr. Wheeler, but we'll talk more about that in a bit. Basically, the sheriff says that with that kind of money, Pat would be able to provide for both himself and Liz. Chase asks if he checks the hospital, so the sheriff wants to know where his gang will be. Chase says that two of them went to check out their cars for a party, and the sheriff warns them about no drag racing. before letting him to know if he hears anything about Pat and Liz as he leaves the garage. And again, I don't want to keep like beating a dead horse, but what I like about it is that he doesn't treat drag racing like, oh, you darn kids and your wacky antics. It's just like, take it easy, man. That kind of thing. Like, don't get too wild. I like that. I really do like that.
Take it easy.
Yeah, exactly. He kind of looks like Rabbit Mario with that mustache. He kind of looks like Rabbit Mario with that mustache. But anyway, we then cut to the sheriff going to Liz's house, and we see her parents, who are rural farmers, asking them how they are holding up. Basically, the best way to describe her parents are, think of Eustace and Muriel before they moved to nowhere, and you're pretty much halfway there.
Yeah. Oh, living on a prayer.
His father says that they're fine, but his wife says that he was driving the truck looking for her all night long. The sheriff asks if they know if Liz would have eloped, but they say she was tight-lipped about all of her affairs and that. He tells them that he's doing everything he can to help find her as they thank him. As the sheriff drives off, he nearly drives into Old Man Harris, and he demands to basically smell the old man's breath to see if he was drunk. And this is how you can tell this is made in the 50s, because Old Man Harris's drunk driving is basically treated as oh, you wacky old scamp, rather than, what the hell are you doing, you crazy bastard?
Yeah, I get it.
Yep.
But the crazy how drunk driving was like, aha, it's funny, but people are gonna die.
Yeah. Yep, different times, I guess. But we then cut to Chase's garage as his boss asks if he fixed the tractor. He then says that he doesn't like basically making up the trip, as he has to carry the nitroglycerin to the storeroom near Wheeler's oil wells. Chase mentions that he made money by carrying the nitroglycerin, saying it's not that hard to do, and that if it's in the case, it's not dangerous. His boss says that he kept it out of the case. Basically, Chase leaps up, yelling at him that he's lucky to be alive. Then he puts it in the shed, which I'm sure is not going to come into play later. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Yep. He then tells his boss about the sheriff's new car, as his boss asks if the nitro is safe in the shed. Chase says if it's not safe in there, it's not safe anywhere. All of a sudden, the phone rings, and the boss says that's not their phone ring, which I guess in those days you had like different phone rings to tell like who was calling in that or something. Didn't really understand that portion of it, but regardless. Basically, Chase says it's... Oops, I got...
Doesn't surprise me. I mean, there were a lot of phones in that day. More so than cell phones.
True, yeah, definitely. They wouldn't exist for another like 30, 40 years, but yeah. Basically, Chase says that it's the sheriff as he calls him in to tow a wrecked car and come with the ambulance as well. Chase answers the phone and listens in as the sheriff says they found a car wrecked in a ditch outside of town. Chase asks for the wrecker as his boss says that he took it before telling Chase to use his own car. We then cut to the sheriff and Chase arriving at the accident scene as the sheriff notes that the engine is warm, and Chase notes that this car's skid marks had it going in a 90-degree angle in the road. Obviously, he was trying to get out of rock bottom, but of course they can't follow the bus.
Nope.
Nope. But the sheriff basically notes that the inside of the car is covered in blood, as Chase says that there's literally no one else around for miles. Chase suggests that maybe someone picked up whoever was in the car in the accident, as the sheriff said that was unlikely, being how rural it is. The sheriff then notes that Chase's headlights in his hot rod are burnt out, telling him that they only cost $4 and basically telling him to get some. But Chase says he has some expenses on Missy, his little sister. He mentions that the doctor says that she could be walking soon and that he put down payment on her braces, which also will definitely come into play later, as we'll see. The sheriff then tells Chase that he has a screwdriver and he takes the headlights from the broken car and put it onto his. We then cut to basically the tow truck driving away before we finally get a look at our titular monster, the Giant Gila Monster. And oh boy, we have a lot to talk about this one, because the Giant Gila Monster is actually a misnomer, because it is not a Gila Monster. It is a Mexican Beaded Lizard, which is pretty much close enough to a Gila Monster, and I guess the Giant Mexican Beaded Lizard wouldn't have sold as many tickets, I guess. And how they do this is probably one of the funniest ways you could have done this, because you're thinking, oh, they could have done like stop motion, they could have had like a giant puppet in that, but no. This is, for all intents and purposes, a real-life lizard walking around in like a miniature set and like just flicking her tongue out at stuff. And this is not scary in the slightest. Like, this is Like they are trying to make this out to be like a big, scary, menacing monster. This is the least scary thing like imaginable. Like it's almost comical and really just adorable. It's like one of those things you have to look at and it's like, "Aw, you really tried. You really thought this would be scary, didn't you?"
Yeah.
Yep. But anyway, let's see. Matt, you were gonna say?
So they used a Mexican beaded lizard and called it a Gila monster. Look, it's the 1950s. You gotta expect a little species swapping. We've moved past that, but it's gonna come up every now and again.
Nice.
Perfect.
Oh, wow.
Angron.
Yeah. So the expectation, reality, it's just vibing.
Yeah.
In fact, honestly, like I'll bet the whole time the lizard was just on the set, just like, this is my life now. And just like walking around, just like
Yeah. Well, we'll talk more about its reaction to stuff in a little bit. Shark, you were saying?
I just wish there was a way to see the behind the scenes of this, like the whole camera crew recording a tiny lizard in a tiny box with tiny buildings and toy cars moving around. I just wish I knew how that looked upstage.
Yeah, I mean, and there are some, shall we say, bloopers with it that we'll talk about in a little bit that you can actually see in the final cut. But yeah, like I say, the reason we are discussing this is because this is actually a female Mexican beaded lizard. So in that way, it counts, you know?
yep.
Probably one of the stranger justifications we've had to do this, but still not as bad as the Super Mario Brothers movie, that's for sure.
Indeed. Also, let us fight man versus tiny baby man. Or better yet, let us fight lizard versus tiny baby man.
Nice. But yeah, basically the Gila monster, she is sitting in a ravine before hearing a car drive by and going to see what it is. We then cut to a hitchhiker trying to get the attention of passing cars. And again, here's where we talk about the Gila monster because the way she walks is very, very slow. And I think it's like, it's almost comical in a way, seeing her like slowly making her way through the like the foliage and that, like trudging along, which happens quite a bit in this movie, and it's always kind of funny when it does happen. The hitchhiker, meanwhile, pulls out a cigarette and prepares to light it as we then cut to like a shot of the Gila monster as she flicks her tongue before the hitchhiker falls over in shock, which I guess he was that scared that she just did a little blep at him.
The breath of death.
Yep.
That's awesome.
And she then basically kills the man by crushing him with her paw in the opening. In fact, it's exactly like from the opening because they just reused the footage here. And interesting enough, this is the last time they reused that footage, like the paw coming down and crushing it. I don't know, it's because like they decided not to be so repetitive, or they thought that, you know, they wouldn't want to reuse it too much. But it's interesting they only did it twice, and really for the first kills in the movie, shall we say.
Indeed.
Yep. But like I say, and again, I think why it works too is that you could tell that the Gila monster and the people are not even remotely in the same shot. What's interesting is they didn't try to do like forced perspective or like anything like, for example, basically like putting it on a green screen and that and having like the person react to it on the green screen. It's like, it's the Gila monster, then it cuts to the victim, or it's like the Gila monster, then it cuts to the people. They are never in the same space at the same time, which is pretty much probably why they had to do that, but still, interesting to note. Go ahead, Matt.
My favorite part of the lizard effects is whenever she does flick her tongue, you hear a very loud, high-pitched sound. So I think what happened is they literally just had a boom mic up next to her because they were that low budget, and that's the actual sound played on the boom mic.
Yep.
Yep, and they play that sound effect quite a bit. Oh, go ahead, Shark, sorry.
No, cool be.
Yeah, definitely. But
yeah,
we then cut to Chase, the sheriff, and Chase's boss as they all talk about how the wrecked car was a stolen one from out of state with plates that are from Texas. The sheriff then asks Chase to help him take pictures of the car's skid marks. Oh, go ahead, Angron.
Something nickel, something two of them, something car crushing, something lizard just vibing.
That too. But basically, what happens next is that we cut to Chase driving along the road before seeing the hitchhiker's abandoned suitcase. The sheriff stops with him and asks him about the suitcase, as he mentions that there's no rips or tears in it, that it probably didn't fall out of a car, because if it did and landed in the bush, it would have gotten like scratched or dented somehow. The sheriff then says it came from either a hitchhiker or whoever stole the car in the first place. The sheriff then notices the group of cigarettes, including the broken one, in the grass, and we then cut to the Gila monster looking at them through the trees, and we get a basically a front-facing shot of the lizard, and it's honestly even more comical because here it looks a little cross-eyed, which, granted, is probably not the intention, but it makes it even look more adorable than it already is.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just vibing, and meanwhile, it was like, ah! And meanwhile,
Yeah,
she's just taking a
exactly.
sip. Can I get off set now?
Exactly. But the sheriff basically knows that it can't be the car thief, saying that he was here too long. Chase and the sheriff drive off as the Gila monster walks off slowly. And again, as Math said, basically, a lot of the charm is how they had to work around the movements of a real life animal, same thing that Shark mentioned as well. And in an example of this, it actually looks like the Gila monster winks directly in the camera as the scene fades out, which definitely was not intentional, but it probably is one of the better shots in the movie for what it implies.
Indeed.
Yeah, go ahead, Chuck. You were saying?
Head was empty through the whole film.
Head empty. Only
Yeah.
blip.
Yep, that's for sure.
Yep.
And we'll see a lot more of her blepping, but for now, we cut to Chase arriving at the Wheeler house. Lisa basically arrives and talks about how Mr. Wheeler was angry about her being with Chase, saying that if Mr. Wheeler sees her with him, he'll send her back to France. She says that he could do that as he is her sponsor at the time. Chase tells her that was so she wouldn't be a ward of the state, and Chase then says that you don't need Mr. Wheeler because you speak enough English to get a job and be independent on your own. And one thing to note here is Lisa Simon, I'm sure she was a lovely woman. I mean, lady was a beauty queen. I mean, this woman looks stunning, but she has a very, very thick French accent. Like, you could tell English was not her first language because some of her lines are actually kind of hard to understand at times.
Indeed.
Go ahead, Angron. You were saying?
Yeah. Honestly, like her dynamic with the other actor in the movie is pretty cute, though a little tame. Like I wasn't too invested in their dynamic, but when the cute moments happened, like the upcoming one, I really enjoyed them. Like it shows that she really does care, and she kind of did have a little bit of a semi-badass streak, even though she's the dame of the movie, as it were.
Yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from there. But basically, she then tells Chase that she doesn't want to leave. Then about how Mr. Wheeler blames Pat's disappearance on Chase. Chase tells her that everything will be okay as they embrace each other. We then cut to the next day as we see a car speed down the road. The Gila monster herself quickly crosses it as the car spins off and crashes into a ditch. Chase is driving along in the tow truck, then goes to see if the man is all right. It turns out that this guy is also a drunk driver, as basically Chase asks who he is and how he crashed. The man basically drunkenly says that his name was Horatio Smith, and that he saw a giant pink and black burr going across the road. And believe it or not, there are colorized versions of Giant Gila Monster, and they do actually color her pink and black, and it's a very weird effect. Let's do it that way. I feel like it's one of those things where it does work somewhat better in black and white because like having the monster like be like, and it's not just pink, it's like a neon pink. It actually makes it somehow even funnier than it already is. But go ahead and run.
Yeah, honestly, that's not beyond the realm of possibility. Like, I mean, the typical Gila monster coloring is like orange or at least golden orange and black, but I can probably see a few off colorations where it's like pink and black as well, or at the very least, grapefruit colored and black.
Yeah, I definitely can see them doing that. But what happens next basically is that Chase offers to drive the man to the garage, but Smith basically stumbles onto the car and tries to drive off as Chase tells him that he can't because again he's totally wasted. But yet old man Harris driving along the road in his old jalopy is fine. Try to work that one out. But basically, Smith, completely drunk, thinks that he's fine, and as his car is being towed, he tries to drive it as Chase tows him away. We then cut to Chase hammering on some metal as we get our first, but not last, musical number. Because for some reason, Gordon McLean thought that this movie should have musical numbers, which the Killer Shrews does not, by the way. And the song is called My Baby She Rocks. It isn't too terrible, and Don Sullivan actually has a pretty good singing voice, I'm not going to lie. And also interesting, he wrote the songs for this movie.
Yeah, I gotta give credit to this film for doing that. Like the songs in this movie, when they're sung by actually talented people, it 100% is a treat to listen to. Like, yeah, they kind of take away from the film's intensity, if there ever was one to begin with. But yeah, it helps flesh out Don Sullivan's character, and again, helps bolster the dynamic he has with the female lead and the little girl lead.
Yep, exactly. And the one thing I will say that does make it kind of hard to listen to is that he's hammering on a piece of metal as he sings it, which number one makes it harder to listen to, and number two is kind of annoying, which might be the idea, but still, it's like not the best place to put a musical number when you're doing that kind of activity. But yeah, definitely an interesting choice. Go ahead, Matt.
My thought is that one of the ways that they kept the budget low is they were able to get Don Sullivan at a relatively low price, and his condition was that he could do some songs in this basically as a demo reel thing.
Yeah, I can definitely see why, because again, he seems like one of those guys from everything I've looked up on him. He was kind of like a hometown legend in that, but he never really made an acting, which is a shame because again, he is pretty good in this. Go ahead, Shark, you were saying?
It was multi-talented, and it's really funny when the composers are also singers, like Danny Elfman in Nightmare Before Christmas. He voiced Jack whenever he sang.
Huh, that is true. That is a good point. Like I say, probably not the only connection I'm sure Nightmare Before Christmas has with Giant Gila Monster in a way. But basically, what happens is Smith slowly wakes up from his hangover and stumbles into the garage. He tells Chase that it should be a crime for you to feel so good while I feel so bad. Then asks Chase how he got there, and Chase tells him that he towed him after he crashed into the ditch. Smith says that he didn't remember much of anything other than the pink and black blur, as he asks how he got into the bed. Chase jokes that I sat on you until you fell asleep, which, interesting. Chase then says that Smith wouldn't have gotten far in his condition as he appreciates Chase's help. He asks Chase how much he owes him as Chase gives him coffee, telling him that it'll cost him $2 and that he made the tow free as he was going that way anyway. Smith instead decides to give him his business card, telling him to look him up if he ever goes into the city, and gives him $40, which, quote, to buy a sponge hammer. Go ahead, Matt.
To understand why $40 was a big deal back in that day and why Chase got so excited at that amount, that is the equivalent of $450 today.
Yeah, especially, like I say, for a guy like Chase living in a town like that, that would be a huge get. Go ahead, Chuck.
Look, he's excited because with $40, he can buy his mini Mario toy.
Nice.
Yep. Well, they fought DK. Now they're gonna fight the Giant Gila Monster.
Yeah.
But it turns out that Smith is actually Steamroller Smith, a famous disc jockey, and I guarantee the reason they put him in this movie because he is played by Ken Knox, who actually was a disc jockey at a local radio station in Dallas. So pretty interesting there. That they basically again cast the expert kind of deal.
Yeah, like it's very interesting. Like for a low budget film, they got a lot of like talented people and legit experts. Like I'm genuinely surprised that they did that and this film turned out the way it did, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But basically what happens is Smith basically calls after him as Smith drives away. We then cut to Chase driving to the sheriff's office, who asks if he's heard from Pat and Liz. When Chase says no, the sheriff mentions how he's worried because Mr. Wheeler holds all the influence in the town, and of course his son is missing. The sheriff notes that he doesn't have enough manpower to search the entire wilderness, knowing that it took the Dallas State Police like 19 days to find a man dead in a canyon, and he's only one guy in like basically the middle of nowhere, so kind of a hard job there. But basically, Chafe offers to help him out with him and his gang searching the overpass, and the sheriff says that he appreciates it. The sheriff then talks about the skid marks again and how the headquarters thinks that he's nuts, and we never get to see who headquarters is or who mans it, so kind of an unexplained thing there.
Hmm.
Chase basically asks him why he didn't send the pictures, as the sheriff says the pictures ended up terrible. Chase says he'll testify in the sheriff's defense, as he wiped up the rubber dust with his fingers before noticing the tire spots. The sheriff noticed that the front tires got off the wrecked car and onto his, as Chase says that on the wrecked car they'll rot, but on his car he could use it to prevent a blowout. The sheriff tells him to take care of them before driving off, and we cut to the hot rods then driving along the road. One of the teenagers said that they've searched half the roads already before Chase points out the ravine as the car drives off. And it's here we get more of the Gila Monster herself, because we get a lot of fun moments in this little montage here. Chase and Lisa basically go into the ravine as we see the Gila Monster. She bleps directly in the camera a couple of times, again, unintentional, before following them into the ravine. The pair basically look at it as the Gila Monster trudges along the landscape and follows them. And to make things even funnier, they play the scary theremin music over this montage,
Indeed.
which makes it even funnier. But eventually, Chase notes that it looked like a wild animal dragged something across the landscape, as Lisa is surprised at this. The Gila Monster still follows them, as we then get the first of many bloopers that I'm probably going to point out, because the Gila Monster accidentally gets one of the trees caught in her paw and crushes it, and it goes on her back and that. One of the miniature tiny prop trees, which definitely looks like it was not meant to happen.
Yeah, and all I can think of when I hear it is excuse me, I was told that these trees would bend away from me, not onto me. Oh, I need to talk with my agent.
Classic. But basically, Chase and Lisa are still looking as the Gila Monster paws at the ground. Again, probably something that was unintentional. Then flicks her tongue out again. We then cut to an extreme close-up of the Gila Monster's face, with her sticking her tongue out and opening the mouth. And this is really unintentionally funny because the way it's just shot, it looks, again, it's just a wild animal. So again, it definitely wasn't planned, but it really just looks so silly, you know?
Yeah.
Classic. But Chase asks if, go ahead, Shark.
Yeah, I can just imagine them filming it and the people are gonna be so scared. Oh, it's so scary, and nope, it's the opposite.
Expectation versus reality.
Exactly. But basically, Chase asks if Lisa is thirsty, noticing a deposit of water. The Gila Monster peeks her head out from behind a tree and flicks her tongue out again. Chase notices the water is bitter and has a lot of mineral content in it. Lisa basically asks if they could leave as she doesn't like the area, but Chase just tells her to sit in the shade and relax. The Gila Monster, meanwhile, is watching them as Chase and Lisa approach the area she's at, with it being implied that she is right behind them, because it's the Gila Monster, then it cuts to Chase and Lisa, then to the Gila Monster again, and we get one of the rare non-Gila Monster related bloopers, because as basically Chase and Lisa are walking down the hill, the camera actually shakes for a couple of seconds, indicating that the camera operator filming it probably nearly fell down the hill, but managed to save the shot. So, yep,
Gotta love those
with a
bloopers.
budget like that. But Chase and Lisa basically are kissing as the Gila Monster flicks her tongue at them several more times. And what's funny about this scene is it's implied that Gila Monster is probably only a couple of inches away from them at most, because it's supposed to be, I guess, from the Gila Monster's point of view, the shot of Chase and Lisa, and yet they don't notice it. It's a giant lizard monster right behind you, and no peripheral vision at all.
Yeah. All I could think of is just them kissing. They see the lizard and they're like, "Oh, don't mind me. Just keep doing. Just keep doing what you're doing." I do this all the time.
That would be amazing if they did.
Definitely.
But a car horn suddenly startles them out of their kissing session as the Gila Monster walks away. When they climb back up the hill, one of the teenagers tell them that they found Pat's car, but without Pat or Liz in it. Chase and Lisa get in the car with them as they drive off. We cut to Chase and the other male teenager looking at the remains of Pat's car. Lisa hears something falling down in the background, wondering what that was. The other female teenager says that it's probably a rock slide, but of course it turns out to be the Gila Monster watching them. Chase tells Lisa to turn the motor on and start the key to basically tow Pat's car out from the ditch. As the car is being towed up the cliff, we see the Gila Monster slowly going down the mountain, crossing the road yet again.
Why'd she cross
then-
it? To get to the other side, of course.
Of
Yeah.
course, she's a smart girl if nothing else.
Uh-huh.
Yep. The teenagers and Chase drive off as the Gila Monster watches them leave, and kind of a reused shot, but also one that kind of works because the way they frame it, it does kind of look like she's watching them as they leave. So I give the filmmakers credit for that. That they had like no budget, but they had a dream. Let's put it that way.
Nice.
Yep. But we cut back to the garage where Chase arrives with Pat's car. The sheriff arrives as Chase and the other male teenager works on it while the girls drive off. The sheriff asks where they found it as Chase says about finding it in the reservoir with Pat and Liz not in it. Chase suggested they were thrown out of the car, but they searched the area to find no sign of them. They didn't find any footprints either, as the sheriff notes that the car was hit, much like the abandoned car they found earlier. Chase notes that it could have fallen down the cliff, which he was kind of half right. I will give him that credit, because it did fall down a cliff at least. He then notes that if Pat and Liz were to elope, they wouldn't have taken his father's car, as again, Mr. Wheeler would have been outraged by it. Chase then notes that it could have been stolen and rolled off the cliff over not being parked right. The sheriff goes to dust for fingerprints as he basically laments to the boys about not calling him first. And here's one thing that I definitely have to point out, because they were in the middle of nowhere. This is a time without cell phones, and they literally were in the middle of the wilderness. It's like, of course they were going to get the car up first before contacting the sheriff, you know?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, go ahead, Angron.
Like I hear middle of nowhere and this particular thing, and all I can think of, when's Courage just gonna come up and just do some random shit already?
Yeah, that would have been an amazing crossover. Surprised that
Yeah.
never happened, considering we'll talk more about the Gila Monster's appearance in other media later.
Indeed.
Basically, what happens is the sheriff notes that Mr. Wheeler is going to be extremely upset for not finding the car sooner before asking where Chase's boss is. Chase says that he went to the basically went to the oil field before the sheriff leaves. We then cut to Chase's boss driving an oil tanker while whistling. We then see the Gila Monster show up in the road again, and here's where we get again one of the funnier moments with her, because due to the way this scene is edited, basically it's the Chase's boss driving in the oil tanker. It's a close-up of her flicking her tongue out, and then the oil tanker tips over and explodes. It makes it look like her tongue somehow managed to flip over the oil tanker and destroy it.
They're
Yep.
doing a lot of focus on the tongue in this movie. Like,
yeah.
as if it's like,
Granted, that probably wasn't intentionally, because, I mean, this thing's a lizard. Lizards like to stick out their tongues, you know. Probably be weird if they had less shots of it doing it.
yeah. Oh man, now just imagining that one scene from Mulan where like Mushu and Mulan first meet, and she's like, "Are you some kind of lizard? Dragon. I don't do that tongue thing." Just flicks his tongue out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Another crossover that this movie needed.
Yeah.
Basically, the Gila Monster then walks away from the scene of the crime, and again, like I say, it really is one of those things that is so unintentionally funny because it looks like she blepped him to death.
Yes, she bleps
Yeah.
everyone to death.
Yeah, and for those of you that are Dead Meat fans, this would be the golden chainsaw of the movie if the Gila Monster's demise does not count, which we'll get to later on. Go ahead, Matt.
So I think that they were trying to do this because there was another movie that came out a little bit earlier that is widely known as like the second or third most known B movie, Tarantula.
Oh,
Where they
yes.
just had a tarantula and made it fucking 50 feet big using shots like this. So I think that they were trying to ape that, but the problem is lizard go blip, lizard look dur.
Lizard
It does not
better.
have the spookiness of a tarantula that you cannot see any sort of personality or anything like that from.
Yeah. Plus, Tarantula did have Clint Eastwood in one of his first movies. He is the guy who he is the fighter pilot who kills the tarantula. He is like, you don't even see his face or anything. This is like, I think it's either like the first or the second movie, because I think he also did The Return of the Creature from the Black Lagoon, where he plays a lab technician in that one.
Nice.
Yep.
Honestly,
fascinating stuff,
though, like as much as Tarantula was the scarier of the bunch, I think this movie's better for the fact that it has Lizard.
man. That too.
Lizard go
Well,
blip.
we might be a little biased here. It's just
Yeah.
But we then cut to Chase returning home and greeting his mother before she tells him not to go in just yet. He playfully tries to get past her as she blocks him. Basically, he jokingly asks if she plays football before she says she plays for the Green Bay Packers, with him literally picking her up. And again, I do like the family relationship is a really, really nice one. You know, again, this feels genuine. Like that's one thing I will always give this movie. This feels genuine. This feels real. And we'll talk more about this compared to other movies like it later on. But for now, let's just get to this. What happens is she tells him to close his eyes as they enter the room. He says that he thinks it's silly before they get into the living room as she tells him to open his eyes. It turns out to be his little sister Missy, who is using her new leg braces that Lisa bought her. She attempts to walk across the room as he looks with tears in his eyes. She basically falls trying to walk, but she says she can get up by herself, and she does so. And this is really tear-jerking. It's even more poignant when you realize that polio was still a thing when this was made. So, like,
polio.
yeah, like this
Yeah.
legitimately were people like this. So I think, again, for the time period, this is really, really something poignant. Like, it doesn't feel cynical either. That's the thing I give him credit for. It doesn't feel like it's trying to make you tug at your heart. You know, it's not intentionally, like, designed to make you, like, tug at your heartstrings. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Edward.
I feel that. Like this entire movie, to a very, very high extent, is 100% genuine. Like all the interactions, the people, the moments, even the silly moments with the lizard, it definitely like feels like you said, natural, and in a way that honestly makes this film a lot more believable than most people would give it credit for.
Oh, definitely. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, if it weren't for the giant lizard, this would have made a really great, just slice of life Americana movie.
I know, it's like one of
Definitely.
those things where like they intended to make like a B monster movie and they ended up making like a charming hometown thing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, exactly that. Like, a lot of monster movies can't really be 100% a monster, and they will usually like just fill it with cheap, random human stuff that really nobody cares. But here, they actually made some sort of compelling story with them.
I know, it really, really is something else. And basically what happens next is Missy walks a few more steps before falling over again as Chase runs over and tells her how she did so great. Missy, meanwhile, is a little distraught as she said that she practiced all afternoon and was actually able to walk across the entire room, sad over not being able to do it. Chase asks her if he wants to hear a song as he pulls out a miniature banjo. And here we get the most famous song of the movie, and the fact that when people review this movie, they definitely talk about this song because this is the song called Laugh Children Laugh, aka the Mushroom Song, which is all about the wonders of the Garden of Eden and basically things like that. Don Sullivan, again, his singing is really, really good here, but the song is a massive, massive earworm. I think that's the thing. Like, I watched this movie, like I say, on Sunday, and pretty much for the last, 3 days, I have had, and the Lord said, laugh, children laugh, Lord said laugh, children laugh, he said laugh, children laugh, he said laugh, that's right. Stuck in my head for, all that time. Like, it is one of those things that it is almost insidious how it burrows in your brain. And it's not a bad song by all means. It's definitely a nice, calming kind of folk song in that. And again, Don Sullivan wrote the thing, so, should be proud of it. And,
Yep.
but it's definitely one of those things because they repeat the chorus a lot with it too, at least 5 times, 6 times. And this is a 3-minute song, so you're going to hear that part of it a lot. Another thing
Indeed.
that is funny about the song is when it cuts to the mother, Lisa, and Missy. The actress playing the mother looks totally bemused at some points. Like, she looks like she doesn't know what the hell is going on. Like, Missy and Lisa look like they're enjoying the song, but the mother has like a, what the fuck am I listening to? Look on her face at some
Indeed.
point. It really is funny, but unintentionally so. Go ahead, Angron.
Yeah, honestly, like most of the songs sung by Don Sullivan in this movie kind of didn't leave a lasting impact. Like they were great in the moment, and I enjoyed listening to them, especially when they helped uplift the moment. But yeah, until you sung a little bit of the song, I did not remember "Laugh Children Laugh" in the slightest. All I could hear in my head was that one meme of like Uganda Knuckles singing, "I don't want to set the world on fire." That one. Sorry.
I can picture that. I can picture that. But yeah, it's one of those things that definitely is brought up in the movie, especially because, spoiler alert, this is not the last time we'll hear it. Let's put it that way. But like I said, the song goes on for like 2 or 3 minutes or so. And then what happens afterwards is that basically Chase goes to Missy and tells her it's important. Basically, Missy tells Chase, it's important to laugh, isn't it? And he mentions how amazed he was at being able to walk so good, saying he thought she wouldn't be able to do it in a week's time. Chase says that Missy has to work hard to get her strength up and to not be disappointed if it takes a longer time than she thinks. Chase's mother puts Missy to bed as Chase has Missy walk out of the room, again in tears over her doing it. Chase is amazed that Lisa paid for the leg braces, noting that it cost her everything that she had, and he says that he'll be able to pay her back as they playfully fight before the phone rings. It turns out to be the sheriff, who says that they found the remains of his boss in the oil tanker. Of course, Chase has to leave as he cut to him arriving with the sheriff. Old Man Harris also somehow is at the crime scene, as he basically notes that the sheriff has a flat tire. Old Man Harris offers to drive them in his car, as Chase instead takes him in his hot rod. We cut to them driving up to the burning car, as the sheriff notes that that's Chase's boss's rig. Chase says that he's not in it, as the sheriff says that he probably crawled away. Old Man Harris then tells the sheriff what he saw, but before he gets to actually the witness, he starts rambling all about his old car and when he bought it, before the sheriff tells him to get to the point. Harris says that the oil rig tipped over and exploded before a witness saw it, going in his general store to tell him about it. The sheriff asks if he got the witness's name or saw anything else, but Harris said no. The sheriff, basically fed up with this, tells Harris to wait in the car as the old man rambles again. The sheriff then wonders what happened to Chase's boss, so he said that he had no reason to leave town and that he's not in the hospital. He then admits to Chase that there have been reports of missing livestock for weeks now, but now that it's escalating to people, it's getting out of hand. Basically, the sheriff then says they need a criminal investigation, but, quote, headquarters won't send any. And of course, we get more discussion about the skid marks before they wonder what could batter a car around like that, with it obviously having the same dents that the sedan and Pat and Liz's car had. So, pretty interesting bit of exposition here. And again, even the exposition doesn't feel forced, you know?
Indeed.
Yep. But what happens next, we cut to the garage where two of the teenagers talk about setting up the party tonight before hearing Steamroller Smith at their radio. It turns out that Steamroller Smith is going to be at their party, as they think that that's what Chase was doing all yesterday. Chase arrives back at the garage while the other two congratulate him on getting Steamroller Smith for the party. Chase tells them that he wanted to be a surprise before asking the others how the party is going. It says to be done in 45 minutes and ready for that night. And we then cut to probably the best action scene in the movie, although we use best kind of loosely here. We cut to Old Man Harris drinking out of a bottle and drunkenly singing a country song as he drives in his car. He then looks at a train and decides to race it, speeding up before just barely making it over the tracks. And another funny thing to notice here, they use stock footage from like 5 or 6 different trains, and none of them look alike. It's like even the colors of it look different at times. It is so funny. Oh, go ahead, Shark.
Yep, again, low budget movie. They had to use whatever they could find.
Yep, go ahead, Math.
I was gonna say, have we mentioned this is low budget yet?
Several
Yeah.
times, in fact.
Definitely.
Even time, as a matter of fact.
Yep. But as Old Man Harris stops to drink some more, the train drives near a bridge. The Gila Monster then is sitting under a bridge and then prepares to destroy it. And here we get another blooper because here it looks like the lizard almost walks off the set. Like it's climbing up the mountain and you can tell it's like almost going off the set. We then come back to a train stock footage. We then come back to the Gila Monster, which is just sitting in the middle of the ravine. Like they placed it there to make sure it wouldn't run off the set.
Yeah, like I'm just imagining like first time is trying to get out. It's just like, excuse me, sorry, trying to get to my dressing room, sorry, and then it's just like the next scene, just like, I hope that cricket shake's worth it.
So, I guess, well, hopefully for her, it definitely was. But basically, the Gila Monster then walks to the road as Old Man Harris rubs his eyes in shock. The train, of course, derails as Old Man Harris stops his car to look at it. The Gila Monster approaches the basically destroyed train as Harris basically turns around and drives away. And this train is so obviously like a little model train set. Like, it looks nothing like the trains that were in the stock footage earlier.
Yep.
Go ahead, Matt.
Me, I know that this is an attempt of, okay, we're gonna make this look really scary, we're gonna make this look really terrifying, we're gonna make this a train crash and it was because of this horrible giant monster. This is the most adorable scene with her. She just looks so happy and content just playing around with these little destructible sets.
Oh, definitely. It's like one of those things that you could tell that the actual animal had no idea what was going on, but it was having fun. Go ahead, Shark.
Yep.
I guess that's because there's more or less a destruction scene. They just allow her to do whatever she pleases rather than move her around and she move wrong, per se.
Yeah, that's true. That is very, very true. And as she approaches the train and walks over it in some parts, we hear people screaming as it's implied she crushed it. And I think what they meant to do is to have the Gila Monster step on the cars, but obviously the Mexican Beaded Lizard was not doing what they wanted at the time, so they had to work around it again. Because the way it's shot, the way that the cars are positioned, you could tell that's what they wanted. They wanted it to like step on it with its paws and that, but it goes directly over them to where it almost crushes it with the belly, which makes it funnier.
Yeah.
But anyway, we cut to the sheriff on the phone saying that he has the same exact story from his witness, saying that it is a strange story, but it is true. The witness, of course, turns out to be Old Man Harris. Harris asks the sheriff if he's going to go to the wreck and puts his feet on the table before sheriff says that headquarters will take care of it. The sheriff asks Old Man Harris what the wreck was like. Of course, Old Man Harris, being a wacky drunk that he is, just begins rambling all about his car again, as the sheriff tells him just to talk about the wreck. Harris talks about how he was driving and racing the train as the sheriff reiterates about the wreck. And then Old Man Harris basically says the greatest testimony of all time. Well, the train wrecked. Then I drove to the police station. Which, yeah, way to go. That really is good evidence. Thank you so much. But the sheriff demands Harris's car keys, something that he probably should have done 15, 20 years ago, judging from the way he acts, and has him locked up for lying as well as drunk driving. Harris, of course, drunkenly demands a sobriety test, his words, not mine, as the sheriff demands that he locks himself up. Obviously, Patrick Starr is going to be in the next cell with his ice cream hangover. But Harris begins to walk out as the sheriff basically turns him the other way and says that he can call his wife. Harris laughs at the sheriff, saying that he's not that crazy as he stumbles off into the cell. And in a really funny joke, the sheriff unscrews Harris's bottle, basically smells it for a second, and basically recoils in shock before putting it away. Like, whatever he's drinking is that potent. So this thing, again, it doesn't sound funny, but I think the way it was shot and the way it was framed, it really, really does work. But anyway, we then cut back to Chase's house as he's singing My Baby She Rocks while getting ready. Missy shows up with a suitcase as Chase jokes if she's leaving. Missy says that she's staying with the Blackwells for the evening before asking if he could take her over there. Chase jokingly says that that's out of his way and it's too far. She looks dejected before telling her that he easily will. His mother arrives and then begins berating Chase for making the car too fast with this new fuel mixture, saying that she went 2 whole blocks before she knew what even happened. Chase jokes that he wants to make a hot rodder out of her before the phone rings again. The sheriff asks for a book of reptiles and for him to come over, with Chase saying that he will after he drops off his sister. Oh, go ahead, Angron.
Something tells me he was preparing her for Mario Kart.
True.
I mean,
And
there is a
timely
giant
too.
reptile nearby.
And timely too. Matt, you were saying?
It seems like this, just how authentic and how wholesome this feels, that I'm kind of upset that we never got like a Don Sullivan sitcom show.
I am also surprised at that. The guy had like natural charisma. Apparently, what happened, he took part in an actor's strike in like 1959 and he was blacklisted, unfortunately. Shame, but shame, because the guy had talent. The guy could have gone places, but regardless, we'll talk more about him in a little bit. But what happens then is that we cut to the sheriff's office, with the sheriff telling Chase that he's been talking to a zoologist about how a Gila monster's size changes. It turns out, like everything else, to be because of thyroids, and that a change in diet can change their size from like being small to being giants and whatever. The sheriff asks what he means. Basically, Chase asks the sheriff what he means, as the sheriff continues about how the zoologist found giant bones around the area, and how salts and minerals cause plants and then animals to grow giant, which I give them credit. They didn't just go with radiation, you know? So, put points on them for that. The coach just said, oh, there were nuclear tests and the Gila monster grew 50 feet tall or something like that. But no, they didn't go with that. I am happily glad to see that. Kind of a nice change of pace. But go ahead, Shark.
Yeah,
sorry.
as we mentioned before many times, this movie tries to stay away from all the cliches of the kaiju movie. Actually, interesting human characters. The monster is not created by radiation, and like the sheriff actually believes the protagonist rather than saying, "Ah, you're drunk" and all that stuff.
Exactly. Go ahead, Matt.
Part of me thinks that they avoided the radiation topic entirely because Godzilla came out a few years prior, and someone on the set was smart enough to go, "No, we don't want any comparisons to that."
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Even though we'll get to a little bit of a Godzilla giant Gila monster connection in a little bit. But what happens next is that basically the sheriff then begins talking about how in Russia and the Ukraine there was a baby that was apparently giant in both size and weight, which has nothing to do with the plot or anything with it or even anything he was talking about. It feels like a little bit like padding here, and unfortunately they did not talk about a Russian dragoness instead. That would have been far better.
Yeah.
But the sheriff then asks if he saw any Gila monster footprints, one that are, quote, as big as a bus. Chase asks if he's serious. The sheriff says that both Harris and some of the trained passengers that survived says that they saw it. The sheriff says that at headquarters out the passengers were hallucinating by seeing something with pink and black stripes on it. And it's here, again, I give him credit. They actually have, like, Chase put the pieces together by himself. He basically remembers that Steamroller Smith says that he saw a pink and black blur before crashing, and then mentions about how they saw something being drug away when they saw Pat's car. He realizes that's what killed his boss, and the sheriff says that he shouldn't have told him this before the party. Chase asks if they should warn the whole town about it, as in kind of a strange decision, the sheriff basically tells him not to, saying that the trooper will deal with the area and to go have fun, to which I have to say, yeah, there's a giant lizard on the loose, and oh yeah, it's killing and eating everything in its path, but nah, go have fun, go have your sock hop, it's okay. You know, you only live once.
Yeah,
Quite
I
literally in
would
this
say
case.
it's I would say it's the 60s, but this was like a year before that would happen, so not everyone was high yet.
Nice. But basically, what happens next is we then cut to the party where the teenagers are all dancing before Chase turns off the music to introduce Steamroller Smith. What's interesting here is, well, first, Steamroller Smith basically introduces himself and plays a hit song as again another dance scene. But the music in this scene it doesn't really sound like rock and roll. It sounds more like swing music, which I don't know. Like maybe they couldn't get the rights to any rock and roll songs because there weren't any like generic music tracks back then that they could use or something. But it feels kind of strange. It feels like they were meant to dance to rock and roll, like in the original cut, and that they spliced it out for some reason when it actually was released in like drive-ins and theaters and that. Probably not really what it is there, but I definitely get that vibe.
Yeah, I can see it. I can, hear it more like.
Yep. But we then cut to the garage where Mr. Wheeler shows up to confront the sheriff. Mr. Wheeler tells the sheriff that he went to the train wreck and talked to a trooper about his son's car. He says that the trooper told him that Pat's car shouldn't have been moved until an official investigation and photographs had been taken. Mr. Wheeler says that didn't happen because the sheriff was protecting Chase. The sheriff basically defends Chase, telling him that he didn't file a report because it wouldn't have helped the situation. And one thing that also is interesting, another subversion, Mr. Wheeler mentions the rumors of the giant Gila monster, with the sheriff saying, "Oh, I don't know about that," because typically in a movie, Mr. Wheeler would be like the cynic. He'd be like the guy who says, "Oh, giant Gila monster, they are no such thing," and then he would be the victim of it. But again, they don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting stuff. But Mr. Wheeler says that he knows it's possible because in the landscape there, the underbrush means that a giant lizard could live there for like possibly years without being found. Wheeler then says that his son is dead and asks how Chase's boss could have been saved if the sheriff did his job and investigated the crash, because the boss's car was by the area where Pat's car was too. The pair then go outside and then point the tires, taking off the sedan, and that Chase took it for his own hot rod. Mr. Wheeler says that that's both thievery and obstructing justice, demanding that the sheriff arrest Chase immediately and that he'll go along with him to see that he does it. Which, again, like I say, it's realistic, but it's realistic in a way where, you understand where he's coming from in a way. And not that the actor playing Mr. Wheeler is a good actor by any stretch of the imagination, but it's suitable for the sequence. Let's put it that way. But as they drive off, we cut back to the party as we see the teenagers dancing again. Steamroller Smith then plays a song from, quote, a new artist, asks them to guess who it's from. The song is called I Ain't Made That Way, and it's sung by Chase, but here's the interesting part. It's done by, of course, Don Sullivan, but he sounds completely different on this record than he does with the songs in the movie. Like, I wonder if he was trying for a different type of singing career with that song compared to the other ones he did, or something like that, but it's something very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, Old Man Harris is also at the party for reasons unknown. Steamroller Smith then turns off the song, asking them all who sang it. They suggest Elvis and the like before Lisa reveals that it was none other than Chase. Steamroller Smith then has Chase come up to the stage and says that he made another song for all of the teenagers to hear. And it's ever get something really unintentionally funny because you think he's going to go and play his new song for the teenagers. He's going to play, My Baby She Rocks. But nope. He plays Laugh Children Laugh for them. And they're all into it. All of these 1950s rock and roll loving teenagers are into this quasi proto hippie folk song. I like to say it's just so.
Wild.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
I was just saying, wild, man.
that too.
Yep.
But like I said, they play pretty much a lot of the song again, which again we pretty much just heard it 20 minutes ago, so kind of early to do it. We then cut to the exterior of the barn as the Gila monster slowly approaches it, and probably my most adorable part of the thing, she's actually crushing, aka playing with some toy cars along the way, and these cars clearly are little toys, like the way they're designed,
Yeah.
Yep. But inside the barn, Chase is still busy singing Laugh Children Laugh. The sheriff and Mr. Wheeler arrive as Mr. Wheeler wants him to arrest Chase right then and there, but the sheriff basically tells Mr. Wheeler that he wants Chase to at least finish his song. However, he never gets a chance to finish it because as he's singing, the Gila monster bursts through the wall as everyone panics and runs away. Obviously, she was really sick of the Laugh Children Laugh song and wanted them to play anything else.
That, or she was channeling her inner Kool-Aid man several years too early.
That too, that too.
Say it was it was the audition for the new Kool-Aid ring that will pop up in a few years later.
That too,
Nice.
that too. But what's also funny here is we get. Oh, go ahead, Math. Before that.
I love how as she's going through the wall, it looks like she's just poking her nose through, and she's not wanting to go through it. And someone's, I can almost hear someone say, "Just push her through it," and then she goes through it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I was just gonna mention that it actually looks at some parts that she actually got stuck in the wall, and that probably the original intention was to get her to burst through the entire thing, like to make it look like, oh, it's scary. She knocked down the whole thing in the barn, but they couldn't do it again. That's what it is working with a realistic animal. You had to work around it. Also
Definitely.
interesting is that Old Man Harris apparently was originally going to die in this sequence. There was a part where basically the Gila monster gets into the barn and he goes upstairs and she basically destroys it with a swipe of her claw, but they couldn't film it because obviously the lizard didn't want to cooperate. But what happens next is that the sheriff runs to his car and gets his shotgun to shoot at the giant Gila monster, with the bullets merely bouncing off her body. She tritters off as Chase runs to the sheriff, asking what's going to stop it. The sheriff plans on getting more troopers, as Chase decides to run to his hot rod with Lisa to go to the storage shed. And here we get kind of the only comeuppance that Mr. Wheeler gets, because the sheriff makes Mr. Wheeler his deputy and tells him to arrest anyone attempting to leave. And Mr. Wheeler basically pulls a Leslie Nielsen here, basically going, please, disperse, nothing to see here, as all the teams basically yell at him and argue with him But basically Chase then arrives at the garage, gets the nitro from the shed, telling Lisa to stay at the office. She doesn't stay, as she says she doesn't want to leave him and she wants to help. Basically, we get another moment that is kind of weird here because Chase basically point blank explains to her, this nitroglycerin is extremely dangerous. It is explosive. I don't know if I'm going to survive, but she's all, I will stay with you. And he's just like, well, can't argue with that.
Definitely.
Yep. But basically, Chase gives in and has her hold the nitro, telling her not to bump or drop it. They put 4 cans of it on the seats and then drive off. They eventually stop by the tracks it makes before Chases of the Gila monster attack the Blackwell house, which of course is where Missy was staying. He runs to the remains of the Blackwell house, screaming for her or Missy. He then runs out before they drive into a field. We then cut to a police officer with a couple of troopers firing at the Gila monster, who again pretty much just stares at them blankly before running away again.
Yeah, it's
We
just
then
like,
come back to... Oh, so go ahead.
yeah, it's like, screw you guys, I'm going to my trailer.
Exactly. But basically, we then cut back to Chase and Lisa as they see the Blackwells running across a field. They stop by Missy, who falls as Chase asks if she was all right. When she says yes, Chase has Lisa get out of the car and stay with her. He instructs them both to lie flat on the ground as he prepares to get rid of the Gila monster once and for all. He then drives towards the Gila monster as it flicks his tongue at him again while she's busy laying in the sand, probably because she wanted to bury it, again, being a lizard and all. We then get probably, unironically, a really good effect here because Chase leaps out of his hot rod as it zooms towards the Gila monster. We get a close-up of her flicking her tongue out as the car suddenly impacts with the Gila monster, causing her to explode. And again, the way they did this looks really good for a movie with this kind of a budget. This looks better than some big budget things did at the time. How they did it is, it's one of those things you have to like slow it down to like where it's 0.25% speed. But how they did it is when the car is zooming towards her, it's a real lizard. You can tell it's a real lizard because she actually tilts her head at it and like raises it up slightly. When it actually impacts with the Gila monster, they swapped out the real thing for like a rubber dummy or something because you can tell that it's a lot less detailed. But this is only for like a half of a second. So again, you would not notice it if you saw it in a theater. So I give them credit where credit is due. And also, this gets the Golden Chainsaw Award. Let's be real. Anyway, go ahead, Shark.
I mean, it definitely looks better than the death of the shark in Jaws: The Revenge.
Yes.
Yep.
And and they used the same format to do it too. They used a rubber puppet just like they did in Jaws: The Revenge.
Yep.
Go ahead now, Matt.
Yeah, as I'm watching this, I'm even for as low budget as it is, I'm wondering where exactly did the budget go? Because these are all no-name actors. These are all people that the producer, he owns like different radio stations and other things, and these are all other employees from those areas. So, and there's no special effects, there's no nothing in this. So I'm wondering where exactly did any budget that this has go? And then I saw this, and I realized, oh, there it went, up in flames.
Exactly. Like this was the money shot of the movie. This is where they put all the effort in, and I'll give them credit. It was worth it. It was worth it. But Chase basically then stares at the burning remains of his car and the Gila Monster as the sheriff arrives. The troopers with him all stare in awe as Chase asks if Missy is all right. She says that she was scared, but fine, then is more worried about her tearing her new dress than anything else. Chase and Lisa says they'll buy her a new dress, or 100 of them, as the sheriff asks if they're all right. The sheriff then says that they found the Gila Monster's trail, then asks what they hit her with. Chase says that he hit the Gila Monster with his new hot rod as Mr. Wheeler arrives. He says that he did it with all the nitroglycerin, as both Mr. Wheeler and the sheriff are shocked over what could have happened to him. Basically, Mr. Wheeler basically says, "Do you know what could have happened to you if that thing exploded?" And Chase jokes, "It did. It blew up my car." The sheriff then basically says that the railroad would buy him a new car as all the other teens arrive and look at the Gila Monster's remains. Missy asks Chase if he saw how fast she was running, as he says that she did great. And of course, with all the teens arrived, the sheriff notices this and berates Wheeler for not doing his job, as Wheeler says it was impossible, basically saying, "Have you ever tried to corral over 100 rowdy teenagers?" And it's like, buddy, if you think teenagers are rowdy in the 50s, you haven't seen anything yet. Yep. But Wheeler basically then realizes that since the Chase's boss is dead, the garage is over and he's out of a job, but that he'll have him go over for a job the next day. The movie... Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Teenagers scare the living shit out of me, etc., etc.
Nice. But basically what happens is the movie then ends with the sheriff, Chase, Missy, and Lisa all staring at the fire before they all basically smile at everything turning out all right. And we ended with the theremin music, which is probably the best way that they could have ended this. Classic. But basically, yeah, that's the Giant Gila Monster. Against all odds, this movie was actually a huge success. It grossed at least 10 times its budget from drive-ins alone. Because this is a time period where you can make a movie like this, ship it out to a bunch of drive-ins, and make millions. And that's not counting the fact that because the director of this movie, or producer rather, owned the drive-ins, he could play it as many times as he wanted.
Indeed.
So he made even more money that way. But it even got international distribution, oddly enough, being released basically in South America and also apparently in like France and Hungary, which interesting there.
Well, damn.
Yep. To point out also, go ahead, Matt.
This guy had a great thing going for him. He owned the theater chains and he owned the radio station, which is where Steamroller Dude came from. So he could not only play the movies, he could advertise them himself.
Yep.
What a market.
Yep, exactly. And basically, Giant Gila Monster has been pretty much in pop culture. Not as much as like Plan 9 or Robot Monster. And God, I wish we could cover Robot Monster, but the dinosaurs in that movie don't count because they're from another movie altogether and they're just alligators with fronds on. And well, anyway, regardless, kind of going on topic there. But yeah, Giant Gila Monster still has been in pop culture a lot. It's public domain, so you'll see it in a bunch of movies and like television shows. It was also referenced in Godzilla, the animated series, believe it or not. In the episode I think called Freak Show, basically Zilla Jr. is brought to a circus of various like lizard reptilian monsters, and the Giant Gila Monster is one of them. And props to the animators they actually made the Gila monster look somewhat threatening and scary. So
Yeah.
they actually did a pretty good job, like making this like literally like goofy giant lizard actually have somewhat of a little bit of a menace to him. I give him credit.
Yeah. Now imagine if the giant Gila monster ended up in the MonsterVerse.
Well, one thing to point out, the giant Gila monster is public domain. You can do anything you want with the character. Like, if you want to make, like, fan art of the giant Gila monster and sell it, like, put prints in that, no one can stop you. Because the character
That's
in the movie
cool.
fell in the public domain decades ago. And, just one thing we'll point out, then we'll get to the question of the week. There was actually a 2012 remake / quasi, I guess, sequel of this that was made on the Sci-Fi Channel in 2012. This is not as good as Giant Gila Monster because, number one, they did the Gila Monster with just the most heinously bad CGI you can think of. This thing would look hideous on like the N64.
Indeed.
But number two, the biggest problem, they tried leaning into the joke. They tried doing a bunch of scenes where, oh, we know we're remaking a bad movie, wink, wink, and that just kills it. That kills it stone dead, the enjoyment of it. Like, a lot of the fun of the Giant Gila Monster is that they were earnest about it. They were serious about it. They actually thought this was going to be, like, a big, big success, you know? I mean, it was, but you know what I mean. But, like I say, trying to be in on the joke kind of kills the joke in a way. Like, the movie actually ends with everybody singing a chorus of Laugh, Children, Laugh, which pretty much tells you what its quality lied in that moment. But, getting back to the original Giant Gila Monster, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, because like you were saying, Giant Gila Monster is public domain. If you have a Mexican beaded lizard, just take your smartphone, do a bunch of close-up shots of your pet, and just call it Giant Gila Monster, and you too can live in public infamy.
That too. But yeah, basically my overall thoughts on it is it is kind of a B movie, but it's an enjoyable one. It's silly enough to have a fun time with. It's actually a lot better than I think its reputation precedes it. And yeah, it's not like Shakespeare. It's not even like War of the Worlds or Earth versus the Flying Saucers level quality. But it is fun. It's one of those movies where if you just want to have a laugh and waste like an hour and 10 minutes like of your time, just having a fun little time laughing, you could pick a lot worse than this. I have more respect for a movie like Giant Gila Monster than I do stuff like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. You know?
Indeed.
At least this was made as like a cynical way to make money, but it had heart. And stuff like Blood and Honey doesn't. But getting off this topic, it is now time for the question of the week, which is, what are bad movies that you personally really, really enjoy? I'm going to go first, and I'm going to pick one that probably is obscure to most of you, but for those of you that have heard of it, it is really, really funny, and it's called, it's an Italian Superman knockoff called The Puma Man. It's from like 1980. It stars mostly totally unknowns, except for Donald Pleasance, who plays the villain in it. And he said this is the worst movie he ever did. And this is a guy who did Halloween 5 and Halloween 6. So he knows what he's talking about. It's basically, it is the most ridiculous, like, Superman knockoff ever because the flying scenes. If you have not seen the flying scenes, it is the guy, like, being pulled on wires, like, from the seat of his pants, in like rear projection of cities, and it has the most ridiculous theme music. It's a shame that I can't, like, you know, visually show you or like play music of it because it is just absolutely hilarious. It's one of those movies that, you know, it is so bad, it is funny, it is hilarious, and it has so many really, really ridiculous moments. It has like the hero himself is incredibly whiny and like unlikable. Basically, the guy who is like his mentor is the real hero of the movie. And the special effects are all really, really bad. Like the giant golden masks and that look really ridiculous. And it's one of those movies that it's just so bad. It's funny. It's that really, really fun time kind of movie. And that's definitely my pick. I was also going to talk about Supersonic Man, which is kind of like Puma Man, except it was Spanish, and it was based on an actual Spanish comic book, but more on that some other time. But yeah, I'm probably going to go with Puma Man for my choice because, man, it is just absolutely, absolutely hilarious. To those of you who know about it, I'm just going to say one thing. Puma Man, he flies like a moron. And that just sums
Good
it
old
up.
MST3K.
But yeah, like I say, it really, really is a hilarious, hilarious choice right there. That's going to be my pick is the Puma Man. So, Angron, what would your choice be?
That's a little bit of a tough one because, to be honest, my enjoyment of movies falls into 4 overall categories. I'm either going to love it, I'm going to like it, I'm going to think it's decent, or I'm just not going to enjoy it. I find some enjoyment in some movies, that the rare few that are actually not that great or universally considered absolutely terrible. But yeah, that's honest. Yeah, that little gray area, that little area where it's like so bad, I find it enjoyable. Either I haven't seen it or I haven't seen all of it, or to be honest, I just ended up liking it legitimately and finding some form of logic to it. That being said, there are 2 films that I can maybe think about and single out one of them. The first is one of Peter Jackson's first films, The Feebles. Like, good lordy. I mean, there's Avenue Q, then there's this movie. Like, this is basically spoofing off the Muppets, and I absolutely enjoy it on that merit alone. For the most part. I mean, there's one character in it, which, let's be honest, a lot of people were no doubt horny for. If you know, you know. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. It basically broke down a corrupt version of the Muppets, made it feel like gradually you get to see the breakdown of the group, like seeing each character one by one get offed or something like that, getting gradually more terrible or like sick or like just not great in general. It's like the Muppets version of The Boys. That's basically it. Feebles is the Muppets. What The Boys is to basically superhero comics in general. That being said, however, I mean, I get why it's bad, but I still think it's a passable time. I like it. There's a lot of fun moments in it. It can definitely get a little raunchy and a little too gross for my taste, but I had my fun with it. Then the second movie that could potentially fall into this is the Dungeons and Dragons movie, the first one. Like, good lordy, I have heard a lot of people bash this movie and ultimately find it unironically enjoyable. And the fact that some of the acting in this is over the top, despite the effects looking pretty abysmal. But I'm a D&D person, so looking at this film from that perspective, I enjoy it. Yeah, it's early D&D, and there's a lot of stuff that could definitely be refined, and also the plot with the freaking, the mages ruling the world and all that. It definitely felt a little odd, but I still thought it was very good. That being said, I'm gonna give it to the Feebles on this one because, yeah, I like the D&D one a little more, but yeah, even I can acknowledge that the Feebles, I can understand why a lot of people think it's bad. I personally don't, or at the very least, I can consider it so bad that it's actually enjoyable. But yeah, I'm basically doing that. It's pretty great. So with that, I'm gonna go with the Feebles.
That is a great, great choice right there. Like, Meet the Feebles are one of those movies that you're either gonna love it or hate it because, I think if you sat down and told somebody that the guy who made Lord of the Rings got his start making movies like this, they would think you're crazy because it is so, so out there. It is like, it's basically, what if the Muppets were like a real theater troupe and they are,
Not
the
great.
Feebles are definitely dysfunctional. Let's do it this way. Very, very dysfunctional.
Very
There's
dysfunctional.
and the music number at the end is interesting. Let's put it that way. The big climactic musical number. Let's not say any more than that because I don't want to get demonetized. But yeah, wow, it's one of those movies that definitely it's worth checking out just to see if you're going to be into it or not. Like, don't even watch the whole thing, but at least a little bit, and it's something else. It really that is a great choice right there because the thing is too with the Feebles, the puppetry is actually really well done.
I agree.
Yeah, it actually
definitely
really does
agree.
look good. But yeah, that's a great choice. So, Matt, what your pick be?
So this one's a little tough for me because typically I don't like bad movies with very few exceptions.
Mhm.
Like stuff like Freddy the Frog, but we've talked about that more than enough as is.
Yep.
Yep.
So I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit because it's a good movie based on a really bad movie.
Go ahead.
Oh.
A Disaster Artist.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh. Never heard of it.
I have loved this film ever since it came out. Looking at the madness that was Tommy Wiseau and the making of The Room. This movie is so good at explaining why the original movie is so bad. They get Tommy perfectly, and I love that Tommy himself, not even just in this movie, just as a person in general, has this weird charm about him that's just so engrossing and captivating. And it's really cool that he's sort of leaned into this and has just accepted who he is as a person. And I'm glad that he's gotten so much fame and recognition from what started out as an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, like I say, the Room is one of those movies that it really just feels like Tommy was like a guy who was like a complete control freak. He had one vision, and he saw that through no matter what, despite making so many ridiculous decisions. He apparently filmed the movie on 2 different film stocks, for one, which ate up the cost. He demanded that the actors pretty much read the script verbatim, much like Troll 2, another classic so bad movie. And yeah, like I say, it's one of those things that the Disaster Artist, I think, really basically it allowed people to watch The Room without having to watch The Room. Let's put it this way.
Yes.
Because
Indeed.
the Room is not an easy movie to get through. Let's put it this way. It's one of those that it's funny, but I don't know if it's like one of those like worst movie classic stuff.
Indeed.
But yeah, that is a great choice right there. You know, that's a classic, So let's see. Shark, what would your pick be?
See, among the many movies I do like, I think one of the ones that gets a lot of hate, which okay, I kind of see it, but still it's actually one from DreamWorks, which is the Shark Tale movie actually.
Oh,
I can
nice.
see that. Yeah, it's not that bad.
It's not that bad, but usually any YouTube critic will usually place it below the like, oh, this movie is boring, the protagonist is unlikable, blah, 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 I could be easily about it, and it's true, and maybe I'm the one wrong, but I don't know, there's something I enjoy. I really like the city, the underwater city, I like it, and I do like the idea of the mafia shark, so I don't know, it's something that it's sort of my liking, I guess. But yeah, other than that, I guess I just find it fun. I mean, it has funny jokes, honestly. It has funny moments that I guess get overshadowed by the negative stuff people think in general about the movie, or maybe the motivation. Still, yeah, it doesn't bother me as much, maybe, and yeah, for me, it's okay. It's an okay movie. I like it. If it's playing on TV, sure, why not? I'll give it a watch.
Yeah, like I say, I could see that, and it's one of those movies that I feel personally as well that I feel like got a bad rap for a long time, and I never really hated. Like, yeah, the designs are kind of weird, but that also is part of its charm. You know, it's one of those
Yeah,
movies that I feel, again, it is fascinating in a lot of ways how different it is from other animated movies. Let's put it that way.
Like they say, oh, the characters aren't like, oh, they're trying to be Nemo, but the characters look humanistic, and it's like, yeah, Well, I think it's the point. Like, yeah, they weren't trying to make something cute. They were trying to make something more cartoony. Like, watching all Looney Tunes cartoons and any guest character is gonna be super hyper realistic and like, yeah, okay, with that logic, it kind of makes sense. Like they put the actors' faces on the fishes.
Yeah, but like I say, it's one of those things that again, it really does work in a way, and like I say, it's one of those movies that I definitely have to agree with you there. That it feels, it really does have a lot of funny moments outside of it. I mean, Sebastian, the whale washing dolphin, alone makes it worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like I say, that alone is a really, really great scene. And yep, I think like yeah, they're all pretty good choices there. You know, definitely unique ones for sure. And had a lot of fun talking about something that is definitely different than what we usually talk about. But now it is time for the patent pending Dragoness scale, where we rank the Dragoness, or in this case, Gila Monster, or in this case, Mexican Beaded Lizard, because they couldn't use a Gila Monster for whatever reason. Haha.
I mean, to be fair, it is pretty venomous. Like, the bite
True.
is no joke.
True. I can kind of see that. But yeah, for my thing, it's is interesting because number one, this is a just really like a giant lizard. You know, it's really like it's a normal animal. It's like it has like really no characteristics. It has no like you know, it's just like a feral animal basically. So you can't go on that. But one thing I am going to say though is that for whatever reason, there's just something so charming about this. There's something that is so like funny and yet so weirdly heartwarming in a way how they did this. It is like it's not scary in the least. Like their intention to make the Gila monster a scary monster, they failed completely. Like they missed the mark by miles. But I don't know. There's something that's just so enjoyable about watching it. Like we all said, like watching it play with the toy train, watching it like blep in the camera several times like that. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I really wanted to give it a 7. I really, really did. I mean, it has so much character, it has so much like enjoyment in it, but it is just like, you know, it doesn't really have any character. It is just like supposed to be a generic monster, but at the same time, man, you get so much entertainment value out of her. You know, that's why I gotta give it that. I really can't give it any more than 6. I really want to give it 7, but it's still a really good score for what really boils down to just an actual animal running on a real life set, you know?
Yep.
So, yep, 6 out of 10 for me. Let's see, Angron, what would you give her?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with most everything you're saying. Like, it's just an animal for the most part, and it's honestly acting like one. But the entertainment value you get out of it is 100% worth sitting through this movie. However, there's a tiny bit more personality underneath the surface. Like, she's just vibing there, blepping, and just like, she's just looking at everything, and she's just like, oh, okay. Like, she doesn't look too invested, and yet she doesn't look bothered at all. Like, it's a giant Gila monster that's just existing, and everyone else is just like, oh. Yeah, but it's for that merit alone, honestly, that I'm going to be the one to give it a 7 out of 10. It doesn't deserve any higher than that, but yeah, she's just vibing, and like, at the end of the day, if you can get entertainment out of just a simple lizard on like a model set, then clearly this film is doing something right in that regard. So yeah, 7 out
I
of 10.
definitely could see that 7. That's a good score. Like I say, no character, nothing like that, but it is just so charming that you can't help but love it. You really can't. So,
Definitely.
Matthew. So, yep, Matthew, what are you gonna say?
So for the Mexican Beaded Lizard herself, she is cute and sweet and charming. She deserves all the head pats.
Yes.
I give her best girl out of 10.
Ooh.
The problem is for rating the character the Giant Gila Monster, and I only have 2 words for that.
Basic bitch.
I am a monster.
Yep.
Unfortunately, like there's nothing I'm rating here. Like I'm basing this off of just pure visuals. The way that I do things, I've said before, it's up to 5 for visuals, up to 5 for personality. There is no personality here. You're using just an animal and just attempting to have it do monster things. I wish this was a nature documentary. I really do. She is so adorable the way that she's just doing everything. I would give her a 10 if it was based on that. But because you're trying to say this is a character in a movie, I can't do anything but a 5 because while she looks really cool and sweet doing all this, there's no character here at all.
Yeah,
For the
no, I
most
definitely have
part.
to agree with you. Yeah, like the bits of character we do get, like it blinking in the camera, like blepping and exploding the tanker, is definitely unintentional on the filmmaker's part.
Mhm.
You know, what little of it that
Yep.
we do get. But let's see, Shark. You, what would your pick be?
Oh,
Ooh.
we
Yeah,
didn't
here's-
get the ranking from Math, actually. What was the
Yeah,
number?
we did.
Oh, really?
He said 5.
Oh, okay, never mind.
It's all good. It's all good.
Well, the interesting thing about this character is that, let's be honest, the real charm comes from the fact that they took someone's pet and placed it on a set and just let it move around. Because if there was a puppet, if it was a person just doing it, or just like in the remake CGI, there will be nothing memorable about this. It will be just your typical monster destroying cities, and that will be it. But the fact that it intentionally, by being an animal, makes it gives that charm, those memorable moments, the bleeping, the blinking, the missing its cue per se, and all that. Like, this is very divisible because all the points I'm giving you mostly come from the fact of stuff that was not planned at all, but what was planned originally wasn't much, so it's kind of divisive because, well, in the movie itself, there's a lot of character. It wasn't on purpose, but in what we saw in the final feeds, there's a lot. So I think I'm gonna go with a 6 as well.
Nice, nice. So yeah, pretty much probably one of the most varied, basically, Dragoness scales we've had for a while on this podcast. You know, usually we're more consistent with like the things, but this time we've almost had a different one with each one. So definitely interesting there. So that's going to be it for this week. If you have any questions, or if you want to tell us if you think the Giant Gila Monster should fight with Godzilla, feel free
Nice.
to email us at fierydiscourse@outlook.com. Visit us on Twitter at twitter.com/fierydiscourse. Visit us at Blue Sky at Blue Sky Fiery Discourse. Be sure to subscribe to the Fiery Discourse YouTube channel and subscribe to the playlist. Hit the bell icon, like the video. Any and all comments are appreciated. Next week, also, one of our co-hosts, Lucky Evie, is looking to move to a group home in the UK. A description for that will also be in the description.
He is
Next
so
week.
goddamn close.
Yep. Any and all help, we will appreciate it, people. Thank you so much. But next week, we're going to be talking about the 2023 direct to Disney Plus TV movie, Lego Disney Princess: The Castle Quest. So we get to talk about a Lego dragon that is not the Lego dragon, but is instead a Lego version of the Mistress of All Evil. How will she be like? We can only speculate. Definitely
Alright.
be interesting to see that. But until then, thank you all so much for watching, and take care.
Later.
Bye bye.
Adios. See you all
Out.
next week.